Anyway, let me introduce Sarah Hillyard. She's our next presenter starting at 2 p.m. and she is an ELT consultant and also a teacher trainer. Sarah is based in Buenos Aires in Argentina. So we have Sarah joining us all the way from Buenos Aires. Sarah has a master's in teaching English to young learners, and this is where I think Sarah and I have a connection. Aside from the fact that Sarah and I are both wearing Macmillan colours today, we also have a connection to York. I think Sarah did her master's degree in the University of York, and I'm based in York. And her master's was in teaching English to young learners. Sarah has a lot of experience teaching and coordinating in pre-primary contexts. And now she offers in-service training and consultancy to bilingual schools. Sarah has also been writing a lot of materials and guides and articles for teachers on behalf of Macmillan, and now is an online teacher for Niall's course, Teaching English in Pre-Primary Education. So Sarah, with a lot of qualifications and experience in pre-primary teaching, is going to talk to us today about boosting confidence for child-to-child interaction in preschool. So I'll hand over to Sarah Hillyard.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for that lovely introduction. Everybody, if it's morning where you are, good afternoon, good evening. We're an honor to be webinar Open Doors to the World. So that's an image that I like very much. So if you could just keep that image in your minds for a minute, open doors. I think that that's what we do in the ESL or EFL preschool classroom. I think we open doors. We don't open doors to learning a language, but we also open doors to helping children develop independence, autonomy, self-esteem, confidence, and the list goes on and on. But I think we're not only teaching a language, but we have to remember that we're developing the whole child. Many of our colleagues talk about realizing that we're not only teaching a language, we're teaching children. So we're looking at the whole child. And I have chosen only one aspect of all of this. I've chosen confidence for today's session. And what we're going to have a look at today is how we can promote confidence in the preschool classroom so that our students can engage in child-to-child interactions and how we need to step back for this to happen. So let's just have a quick look at what we're going to be doing today. First of all, we're going to be reflecting on whether we do this, whether we step back and how much we have to step back to boost confidence and allow child-to-child interaction in the classroom. We're going to look at confidence. We're going to look at some fantastic ideas to move from a very controlled practice of the language to allow for more confidence and independence within the use of routines, games, and songs. So some practical stuff in there. And we're going to look at some tips for success to make sure that this can actually happen. And we go back to reflection. So we end the cycle in the same way, and we reflect upon what we're already doing and what we may do differently in the future. So let's start with some reflection. These are some questions that I would like to ask you. And if you could just write in the chat box what comes to mind, just the first thing that comes to your mind. Do you think that very young learners in a preschool classroom can interact among themselves in a foreign language? Do you think they are able to do this? I ask this question because I am lucky enough to observe teachers working in their classrooms on every week. And what I see a lot is that it seems either that teachers don't really know how to go about this, or that they don't believe that children have the ability to interact among themselves in a foreign language. Think of 4-year-olds, think about a preschool setting. They need the skills to be able to interact among themselves. We're talking about social skills and other skills that they need, turn taking, etc. And we're talking about the linguistic resources that they need to be able to succeed in a foreign language. If the teacher steps back to allow children to interact, do children feel unsupported, do you think? Remember, we're talking about preschool. Think about a 4-year-old and how much support do they need? We know that we need to give them a lot of support, but how much is enough? And when do we step back? And when can we give them the space to interact? Yes, so we've got some lovely ideas here. Not if the teacher is visible. Good. Depends on how they have been trained. Okay, so that's lovely. We need to give them a lot of support and we have to train them to be able to achieve this. And when we get to that point, we can step back and then we will be successful and they will be successful. Scaffold, lovely word. Yes. During most interactions in the classroom, and mainly in a preschool classroom, who asks the questions and who gives the answers? During most interactions, usually, yes, okay, usually teacher asks questions, students answer. So how much are we trusting our students if we're asking questions all the time, expecting them to just sit there and answer our questions? We're not giving them any space for them to initiate interactions if we're the ones asking the questions all the time. It's great for them to learn vocabulary. Of course, we need to build a large vocabulary. It's great to teach some grammatical structures and sentences in which they can embed that vocabulary. But we also want them to ask questions. If they don't ask questions, it's hard for them to initiate conversations. And this is where we want to go. We want to lead into communicating, really communicating in a language. They need to be able to answer questions as well as ask questions. How can we promote confidence? Well, this is a more complex question to answer, just like this in a chat box. So perhaps we could leave this question for the end and we could reflect back on this. Through empathy, playing games, positive feedback, lovely ideas. We'll come back to this later. We'll come back to this at the end and see what we have been working on today, because this is the whole point of this webinar. If you have the answer, then this webinar wouldn't make much sense, would it? So confidence is a big word. It's an important word, and there is a lot involved, as you're saying, eye contact, showing interest in them, roles. Don't overcorrect, playing games, lovely ideas. There is a lot involved in this. But who are we actually talking about when we talk about promoting confidence? Do we need to boost our students' confidence? Do we need to boost our own confidence? If the teacher is not confident that the children will be able to do this task, then we won't give them that space. And we won't give them the opportunities that they need to practice this. We want them to practice confidence, but we need to practice our confidence ourselves too. Children might be ready to interact among themselves, but if we don't see that they're ready, if we don't transmit our confidence, if we don't give them our trust to do so, they won't be given that opportunity. So confidence is a big word. Confidence is key in the classroom. If we're confident learners, we're successful learners. If we're confident teachers, we're successful teachers, no doubt about it. Confidence brings motivation, it brings self-esteem. Little children really need this feeling. In the classroom, our very young learners need to feel secure, they need to feel confident. to be able to interact in a foreign language. We need to remember how difficult this can be and how insecure a very young child can feel when we're speaking in a different language and when they're being asked to speak in a different language too. But the problem is that sometimes our students are not used to it. We're not giving enough opportunities for them to interact among themselves. As they're not used to it, they don't know how to go about it. We have not trained them enough. Sometimes we don't give enough support. As somebody said here, we need to scaffold nicely. We need to give them a lot of support. They're very, very young. We can't just let them go. We need to give them lots of support. But how much is too much support? If we're there on top of them all the time, we won't be giving them that space that they need to be able to show that they're confident and do things themselves. So this is all about scaffolding, Vygotsky, the constructivist theory, social cognitive theory. So what we want to do in a preschool classroom with our very, very young learners is to build this very safe structure. But once we get through this big safe structure, we need to know when to let go. The warning that I would like to give you is that it's not always easy to know when to let go, and there could be danger. It could be risky, and we don't want them to feel this risk. We don't want them to feel insecure. We want scaffolding to be complete. If scaffolding is incomplete, the worker falls off. Taking the lines of Maria Montessori, she says the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the children are now working as if I did not exist. How much do we need to step back? We still stay visible, as someone said here. We're still visible. We're there for support. We're there to moderate, but we're not going to be involved in everything all the time. We're not going to be there to ask questions all the time. We're going to let them do that, and they're going to work as if I did not exist. But I'm still there for them, just in case. So for this, we need to relinquish a little bit of our control. And this is not a nice feeling for a teacher. We like being in control of our lives, of our classrooms, of our students, of the learning that goes on. We're always in control, but we need to relinquish some of that control. We need to accept it. We're supporting them, but we're not taking all the control ourselves. We're letting them take control of their own learning. We're letting them be protagonists of their learning, move them into the driver's seat, put them in the spotlight, let them come to the front of the class, let them be the teacher. Sometimes other children are the best teachers they can have, rather than the teacher herself. And we need to realize that the real social context that our students have are themselves. The teacher is not their real social context. When we talk about human beings being social in nature, and that's how we learn, through social contacts and within our social context, our students' social context is really their peers, not the teacher. That is an artificial social context. So we want them to engage together, and they really enjoy that. So let's take advantage of how much they like using a foreign language with their friends at this age. It doesn't happen later on. Later on, they start being much more self-conscious, maybe shy, but at this age, we can take advantage of the fact that they're not so self-conscious and that they can try things out and they won't mind if they're not exactly correct. We're still there to support them. That's really important. We need to make the environment be stress-free for them. It's a stress-free environment where they can try things out and they're fine with that. Think of a 3-4-year-old. They're fine with that. So we're moving along from a lot of teacher talk, lots of teacher at the front, delivering her lessons, lots of teacher talk, which is great. We want lots of input. Children need input before they can produce that language themselves. But then we want to move into a space where we're still leading, but it's teacher to child. So we want them to give us their answers. We want them to start interacting with us first because we're the ones who are there to give them that security. Child to teacher. We want them to be able to initiate as well and to be able to ask questions for us to answer. So we change that role around a little bit. But then the last point here, the direction in which we want to go is child-to-child interaction. So we're moving from a lot of protagonism for the teacher to children being the protagonists of their learning. Sorry, I'll just go back. The typical interaction pattern in the classroom, as we mentioned before when I was asking you the questions at the beginning, is teacher asks a question, children are sitting, they answer the question, and the teacher gives feedback and praise. Fantastic. That all works very well, and there is a lot of control in that. We know what we're doing, we know how to do it, and children are just there to give us their answers. That's the typical interaction pattern that we find in the classroom, but we want to change that around so that that isn't happening all the time. And what I see a lot when I observe teachers in their classrooms is that a lot of what they do is activities in which children have to respond physically, not orally at first, which is fine. Things like point to the, touch the, Simon says touch your nose. So what are children doing? They're responding physically. They're not responding orally. It's great. We're giving them lots of input. It's TPR. We're checking that they understand and that they can follow our commands. They identify what we're talking about. But then we want to move them into a different area, which is the production of the language. So from this, we move on. It's all part of the same thing, but we want to move on so that they can start producing this language, and even better, they can do it among themselves. So this is all very nice, giving children security and scaffolding nicely, and children producing language and speaking to each other about it. Lovely. But what does it actually look like in a preschool classroom? We're going to look at some ideas that you might want to put into practice within routines, songs, and games. And we're going to be basing this on Bruner's formats. Have you heard of Bruner's formats? He says a format is a routinized and repeated interaction in which an adult and child do things to and with each other. He's really talking about L1 and learning your mother tongue, and he gives the example of peekaboo with babies. So when you have a baby and the mum is standing there and she goes like this, and then she uncovers her eyes and she says peekaboo, and the baby laughs. That's one of the first interaction patterns that a child is going to have repeated over and over again since she's very, very young. This is routinized and it's repeated. The mum is going to do this in the same way every time. She's not going to change that. She's going to say peekaboo every time, and she's going to do the same actions every time, and the response is probably going to be the same every time. The baby's going to laugh. And what we do from here is that we move on to the child being able to initiate that interaction, and the child is going to start playing peekaboo with her mum. So this is routinized and repeated, which is very important in a preschool classroom. Okay, we need structure. There are three components in a format: structure, so that it's always the same, and this is what we're going to repeat. We have roles in peekaboo with its mother and child, which then is going to change into child to mother, and there is a script. Peekaboo, child laughs. So in this case, it's a very short and simple script. But this is what we can adapt to our classroom, and you can see this a lot in routines mainly, but also we find it in songs and games. If you think of your routines, you will see that they follow a script, which is always the same. There are roles that we want to change around. That's the point of this session. and it follows a structure so that children are safe and secure and know what is going to happen and how to do it. That gives them familiarity. They can predict what's going to happen. So that makes it much easier for a 4-year-old, a 5-year-old. So looking at routines, could you just write quickly in the chat box, what are the routines that we use in a preschool classroom? Circle time, greetings, table time, greetings, weather, what's the weather like today? Hello songs, feelings, warm-ups. Okay, fantastic. Yes, icebreakers. We do lots of routines at the beginning of our lesson because this is what's going to introduce them to our English lessons, and this is what's going to get them ready for it. And we're going to follow the same routines. We're going to follow the routines in the same way. We're going to repeat that, and repetition is a good thing in the preschool classroom. One of the routines that I like using is called Pass the Heart. We greet, we talk about the weather, but I always want to ask them about how they're feeling today. So I'm going to use a heart that I have made out of felt. Just cut 2 hearts out of red felt, put some cotton wool in it and stapled it all around. So I've got a heart. We're going to start this routine by being very teacher directed because we're going to model how this is going to happen. So this is at the beginning of that line that we saw before, where there's much more teacher talk and the question is teacher to student. So I'm going to ask, how are you feeling today? And I give the heart to one of the children. The child will hold the heart and will say, I'm happy. The child gives it back to the teacher. The teacher asks the question to another child. How are you feeling today? Gives the heart to another child. The child holds it and says, I'm sad. You can always extend and ask, why are you sad? Because we're interested in knowing this answer. We're not just asking for asking, but we're asking because we're really interested in how our students are feeling. But when we ask the why question, they might have to answer in their L1 because they might not have the linguistic resources to answer why they feel sad in English. So that's not going to be part of the script. The script is just this. How are you feeling today? I'm happy, sad. They'll personalize with their little word that they've already learned. So you see how it's got a very simple structure, how it's got a very simple script, but we want to move away from the teacher being at the front and asking the question to the children being able to ask the question to their friends too and show interest themselves. But many of you might be thinking, oh no, this is just repetition of a scripted dialogue, parrot fashion. What's the point of this? It's terrible. Well, what I'm trying to convince you of is that we need this structure and this script with our very young learners. We can't just throw them into talking to each other in English. They need repetition, they need routine, they need structure and a script-like dialogue to then be able to acquire that and use it themselves. So we need to start here. This is not the end point. This is not the end. It's a means to an end. But we need to start here with lots of security. Being able to use a script that has been given to them gives them a lot of security. It's stress-free practice so that they can use it without fearing mistakes. They won't make mistakes because it's been scripted for them and we've given this to them and they can practice it. So we're starting here with our very young learners in this way so that we can move them along the continuum. So then what's going to happen is that I'm going to get one of my strongest students first to also help me demonstrate this. And I'm going to ask, how are you feeling today? I give it to the child and she's going to say, I'm happy. And I'm going to ask the child, can you come here to the front of the class and ask your friends, please? So the child will now ask the question. But I have repeated that many times before, this same activity in our routine, so that the child already knows the question, how are you feeling today, and gives the heart to someone else in the classroom. So that child is going to take on the place of the teacher. She's going to take on the role of the teacher. She's going to be asking the question. But still, we want to move this forward a little bit more so that all the children in the classroom can ask questions and answer questions. So I'm going to start, how are you feeling today? I'm happy, says a child, and passes it on in a chain. How are you feeling today? I'm angry. How are you feeling today? And we can always interrupt and ask why if we think it's appropriate, but that won't be part of the script itself. So this will be a chain in which the children will be asking and answering questions. Okay. What we're doing here is we're getting our students to become teachers first. And this is a really nice strategy. And I've seen this working very well, even in 3-year-olds' classrooms. I was in a classroom once, and the teacher had chosen a child to come to the front and take her place in the classroom. The teacher took off her pinafore. In Argentina, teachers wear pinafores in the classroom. I know they don't all over the world. And put the pinafore on this 3-year-old. It's a huge pinafore on her, covering herself. So the little child got the magic wand and started going. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by the toe. If it screams, let it go. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And she chose another child. She did all that with a magic wand in her hand. The whole chant for eeny, meeny, miny, mo. And chose another child. That other child came to the front. She said, come here. And the little child came front. So there were 2 3-year-olds at the front of the class. The first child got the weather flashcards and asked her friend, is today a sunny day, sunny day, sunny day? Is today a sunny day? And her little friend said, looked out the window, no, it isn't. And they went on like that until they got to, yes, it is. So they were doing the whole routine that the teacher usually does at the front of the class. But they're only 3 years old. How much confidence did these 2 little 3-year-olds have to come to the front of the class and do the whole thing themselves without the teacher intervening? The teacher sat down in the child's place. So the teacher became one more student. And this was child-to-child interaction. The first child was doing it with everyone who was sitting on the floor, and then they did it together. But this could only have happened because this routine had been repeated so many times. So that's a lovely example of where we want to go. As Montessori said, the children were working as if the teacher was not there, and the children became the best teacher they could have. Another way of choosing children is by using a little chant called I Love You. And this is taken from Mimi's Wheel, which is the new Macmillan series for preschool. It's fantastic, written by Carol Reed. Carol suggests that you use a puppet when you need to choose a few children to participate in games or tasks, and have the puppet say a little rhyme. This rhyme is red, yellow, blue, I love you. That's something very easy that your children can do. It doesn't have to be eeny, meeny, miny, mo, which is much more complex and much longer. So it's very, very short, and it's very easy for them to do themselves after the teacher has shown this, has done this many times as part of the routine. Another way of using routines in the classroom is not only that routine that we use at the beginning of the lesson, but also later on. You could have a routine for your story time. You might have a routine after your art. So this is for after doing art, and it's very nice for children to share their artwork with the rest. Because what sometimes happens is that children do their art, lovely, each one of them is doing something individual at the table, and then we either leave it to dry, or if you don't need to leave it to dry, they take it home. So who sees this? The child is doing it, and then the parents, whenever they take it home that same day or at the end of the term. but it's nice to share all this. So it's lovely to invite children to the front of the class. And if they're able to describe, it would be great for them to just describe in very simple terms. This is a house, this is a tree, or just the words house, tree, if that's what they're doing. So that they can describe their pictures and show their pictures to the rest. If they've done a portrait of themselves, like in that picture, they will say, I've got 2 eyes, a nose, a mouth, black hair. And then we encourage the rest of the children to say positive things, to give positive comments, to look at them in the eyes, to smile, and all these social skills that they need to interact. So they say, that's beautiful. Maybe that's all they say, that's fine. It's lovely, or I like the colors. Any nice language that you want to teach them. But for this, we need to model that first. So at the beginning, it will be the child showing her picture, and we will be commenting. And then we will move on to the child showing it, and the rest of the children saying nice things about their picture. It could be 2 or 3 children every time you do this. If you have large classes of 20 children, you wouldn't do this with everybody, of course. But this is a more natural child-to-child interaction, if you like, where they're actually giving their opinion, but we have to make sure that it's positive. All right, so moving on to songs. Songs are fantastic for boosting confidence because, first of all, songs are something that we do all together. So it's the communal power of singing that already boosts our confidence. And we're happy to sing along with the rest. If we don't know the whole song, we don't know all the words to it, we might hum, we move our heads, tap our feet. We all engage in that song, whether we know the whole thing or not. We do it the best we can, and we all participate as a community of learners in a song. I think I include chants, rhymes, and songs within the big term of songs. But wherever you are, if in your house, in your living room, in your office, in the classroom, in your staff room, wherever you are around the world, could you please just make 2 fists with your hands and put them behind your back, hide them, and follow me with this. It's a very easy song that you probably all know, but it's just to give you this example. Where is Thumbkin? Where is Thumbkin? Here I am. Here I am. How are you today? Very well, thank you. Run away. Run away. This is a traditional song that you probably all know. But the point of this is that it has a script. It is a dialogue. It's in dialogue form, which is even better for what we're working on in this session today. So that it has this dialogue that then we can sing together first. So we're boosting their confidence because they'll know this, because it's going to stick, because songs stick, because of their melody, the tune, because of the tempo, the beat. So it's going to be easy for them to learn that language because it's in song form, but then we want to take that language out and have them practice this together. So we're going to have children in pairs. So with their pair, they're going to do this, and one thumb is going to be one of the thumbkins, and another child's thumb is going to be the other thumbkin. So their 2 thumbkins are going to be having this conversation. We've got a few songs in course books that you might find that also follow this pattern. They follow a dialogue. Another point that's important to remember when we have children work in pairs and look at each other while they're singing a song or using the script from the song is that we actually make a point that they look at each other, that they make eye contact, and that they smile at each other, and that they have fun together, and not always look at the teacher. What children do a lot is look for approval and look at the teacher while they're doing something, even if they're doing it with their friends. So they're looking at the teacher for approval and for security. We want to make sure that they're actually interacting, because otherwise the whole idea of interacting wouldn't make sense. Course book name, please. Well, this is going to be Where's Sam? Is a song that I've taken from Mimi's Wheel, again, which is the new Macmillan series for preschool, which is lovely. And I'm going to see if I can figure out how to play this for you so that we can listen to a bit of the song. But first of all, I'm going to ask, I'm going to use Thumbkin to adapt it to this. This is Sam. Let's say hello to Sam. Hello, Sam. Where is Sam? Where is Sam? Here I am. Here I am. How are you today? Very well, thank you. Run away. Run away. Sam's run away. Where has he gone? So then we lead into a song about finding others in the rooms in the house. So let's see if we can do this. Can you hear this?
Where's Sam?
Where's Sam?
I don't know. Is he in the kitchen? Is he in the kitchen? No, no, no. Where's Sam? I don't know. Is he in the garden? Is he in the garden? Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, it goes on, of course, at different parts of the house where you have to find different children. But then, of course, what we want to do, once this has been sung and it's a conversation, where's Sam? I don't know. Is he in the kitchen? No. Is he in the garden? Yes. It's a conversation, so we're going to take advantage of the song to teach this language and then move it out of the song. We don't want songs to just stay in song form, because what happens many times is that they're great at singing the song, but then they can't ask the question, is he in the kitchen? Because this has not been taken out of the song and it's not been used purposefully. So it's funny when you realize that they can't really take the words out of the song and ask a question like, is Maria in the kitchen? But they can sing it in the song. Well, that's because we need to take it out of the song and use it with them. So we play games after using the song. We can make flashcards for the children so that they can play in pairs. Pair work is great. Sometimes we think children can't work in pairs, but they can. That's from 4-year-olds probably. That becomes much easier. You can put them in pairs, give them flashcards, and they can play this game. They hide Sam behind one of them and they ask, is Sam in the kitchen? No. Is Sam in the garden? Yes. So there they had hidden Sam. So we take it out of the song. Even songs or chants or rhymes that do not work as a dialogue are great if they can do it in pairs. Things like, put your hand out, and I go round and round the garden like a teddy bear. 1 step, 2 steps, tickle you under there. So it's tickly, children will laugh, it's fun, but then the idea is that they do it in pairs. So the teacher will do it at first because we know that we need to model it, we need to show it, we need to do it ourselves. So this will be teacher talk at first. Once we have taught that and with a few students, we can move on to them trying it out with their friends. So you have them in the circle and you have them just turn to the friend next to them so that they're in pairs. One of them puts their hand out and the other one does the round and round the garden. So they're actually interacting together. And remember that they need to look at each other and smile, and they're going to be experiencing the use of a language in a different way. It's not the same to be answering the teacher's questions all the time than to actually be using it with their friends and interact and experience the language in a different way. Yes, we had Julian how many songs are we able to sing along to, but unable to write down the words without resorting to the music? Yes, and the intonation will be good too. Yes, of course. All of these songs will help children to practice their pronunciation and their intonation, and that's why it's important to use games as well for pronunciation practice, phonemic awareness as well. Moving on to games. Some of the games that are very typical for this, that are dialogues as well. What's the time, Mr. Wolf? You need quite a big space for this, but you will be Mr. Wolf at the beginning, so you can demonstrate and show children how we play, and the rest of the children will be at the other end of the room. You might go outside for this. If you can go outdoors, even better. And you're going to look at the wall. You're going to face the wall as Mr. Wolf, and the children are going to ask, "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" And you're going to say, "It's 3 o'clock." So they walk 3 steps forward towards you. "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" "It's 2 o'clock." So they walk 2 steps forward. "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" "It's dinner time." You turn around and you go and catch them. This is an interaction pattern again, where we have a dialogue, and children are not only answering, but they're asking the question, "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" And you as teacher are answering that question. But then we want to turn that around, and another child will be Mr. Wolf, so that they can interact. So they're interacting within a game, which makes it very easy for them. It engages them in using the language. Stacking cups. When you have your magic box, we all have a magic box in preschool. I suggest having lots of cups, paper cups in your boxes, because there's so many games that you can play with cups. So we're going to be stacking cups now. See if you can see this. So you're going to have a cup. You're going to put a cup there, and you're going to be looking at fruit vocabulary. You're going to ask a child, "Do you like apples?" And the child comes to the front, grabs the card and says either "Yes, I do" or "No, I don't," and places the card on the cup. And puts another cup on the card. Then you call another child. "Do you like bananas?" "Yes, I do" or "No, I don't." He puts it on the cup and adds another cup to it. So we're going to demonstrate that first. We've got that interaction pattern where it's the teacher asking the question, the students are answering the questions, but this is just, this is just to moderate, to give them that example to demonstrate. But then we want to move back and say, "Okay, your turn to play now." So a child is going to come to the front, choose a card, and ask their friend, "Do you like pears?" So it's the child using the question now, placing it and placing another cup until it either falls down, or if it doesn't fall down, you ask, "What do you want to do? Do you want to take it down nicely, or would you like to blow it down?" And they'll all say you want to blow it down. So you'll all blow down the cups. But we're moving from the teacher leading the game to allowing the children to play on their own, asking and answering the questions. And we step back with confidence, because we know they'll be able to do it, because we've done the scaffolding very nicely and we've given them that support. We're still there for them, but they can do this easily on their own. We don't need to be there playing the game with them all the time. We can move into the circle and become one of the students. Hide and seek, related to the song that we looked at before, Where's Sam? Where's Sam? Is he in the living room? We can play hide and seek. We can hide a puppet somewhere in the classroom, and the children will have to ask that question and answer using that same language. So half of the class will cover their eyes, the other half will hide a puppet, or even a child can hide somewhere in the classroom, and you have the flashcards of the different rooms in the classroom, so that the group that was covering their eyes uncovers their eyes and asks, "Is Juan in the living room?" And the group who knows the answer will say, "Yes, he is," or "No, he isn't." For Guess Where, we have a student standing at the front with one of the flashcards covering her face. And we have a child standing behind her and the rest of the children sitting in a circle. The children are going, one of the children that's sitting in the circle are going to say, "Is Maria in the living room?" So the only one who knows the answer is the one here behind me. And the one behind me is going to say, "No, she's not in the kitchen," or "No, she isn't," or "No, just no." So we're going to keep asking until they guess, "Yes, in the garden." So this is child-to-child interaction. You see, the teacher is not even there. She's going to be there for the first few times, but then she's going to move out of the way. So let's have a look at some tips for success. We've looked at routines, at songs, at games, different types of games and routines and songs to use. And I'd like to go back to our initial questions just for a minute, because there was one that we hadn't really answered fully. How can we promote confidence? So could you write a few ideas there in the chat box? How do we promote confidence in the preschool classroom? What have we looked at? What type of environment do we need to create? What type of feelings do we need to create so that they can interact together? Let's look at the last question. Engagement, stress-free, make the students comfortable. Low stress, yes, they can. Yes, we need to trust them. Yes, we need to trust them, trust that they can and they will be able to. Lots of risk taking, but this risk taking will, we're going to lower their anxiety for risk taking so that they really do want to engage. A loving and fun atmosphere, lower down the affective filter, no pressure, so that we make it nice and secure for them, so that there's not too much pressure. Create a routine so that they know everything that will happen and how to proceed. So see that not only within our, what we call our routines, but within a song or within a game, we create a type of routine in which we have a format, the structure, the roles, and the script that we will maintain until we can move the roles around. Not too much correction, enjoy, based on times, game-like activities. Yes, great. How can we, yes, fantastic. So let's look, those are lovely ideas, and I should add them to my list. This is my list. We need to move from input, because remember that input is very important, and we need to make sure that the input is there for them. Whatever goes in will come out at some point. If it doesn't go in the first place, it will not come out. So we need that input. But then we want to move to minimum teacher talk. We want to move from the front of the classroom to let the students be at the front of the classroom. We want interactions, a clear format. Can you remember the 3 components of Bruner's format? The 3 components of Bruner's formats, do you remember? Structure, script, and roles. Okay, if we have those 3 in the activities we do, they will be very easy to move along the line from teacher-directed to child-directed activities. Be consistent and systematic with the language and with the structure. Encourage children to take a more active role in the classroom, not just sitting and answering our questions, and adapt whatever you do to child-to-child interaction so that you move along that line and practice more than language. That means we're developing the whole child. We're practicing confidence. By developing confidence, we are getting them ready to be successful in life. We're opening that door that we talked about at the beginning for them to interact with other people in real life, out of the confines of the classroom, out of those walls that we have around us. So what have we done today? We've done quite a lot. We've talked about confidence, we've talked about formats, we've talked about routines. These are the activities I showed you: Pass the Heart, Child as Teacher, I Love You chant, using puppet, start and end routine. For songs, Where is Thumbkin? Where's Sam was the song that we listened to. Round and Round the Garden, to interact in pairs. Games, What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, Stacking Cups, Hide and Seek, and Guess Where. So we've done a lot. How long should it take to move from input to minimum teacher talk? Well, that depends, but it could take some time. Sometimes we think in terms of units of work in the preschool classroom. So we might be using a topic or a theme for a whole unit of work. And we're going to move very slowly from lots of input to getting children to answer our questions to the point where they can interact among themselves. That could take the whole unit of work. It's not something that we do in one lesson. It's not like, you know, PPP for older learners where we presentation, practice and production in one lesson. We will be moving much more slowly with our learners, but the more structure and script that we give them to refer to when we give them the opportunity to interact among themselves, the easier it will be for them to do that. So let's make things quite routinized. Let's use repetition. It's a good thing in the preschool classroom to use repetition, but always make sure it's within a game-like activity. We don't want it to be dull and boring and just drill. We want it to be engaging, okay? So thank you very much. Remember that the greatest sign of success for a teacher is to be able to say, the children are now working as if I did not exist, or at least playing or speaking or being confident as if I did not exist. And you might exist, but you might exist at the side, or you might exist sitting with the rest of the children, but allow them to take on the leading role. So thank you very much for being here. I can't thank you enough.